Welcome to Lifting the Lid on Technology, a podcast series brought to you by SoftSource in association with New Zealand's leading IT vendors and experts. I'm Barry White, VCIO Principal Consultant at SoftSource. In this series, we explore opportunities and challenges in the world of IT. And I'm joined today by David Small, CTO for SoftSource Feebridge. Welcome, David.
Thanks, Barry. Hello to everyone.
So, look, in this podcast, we're going to talk about, I guess, one of the hottest topics in IT security today, which is SASE, or the Secure Access Service Edge. And I know, David, I'm really interested in what you've got to say today, because there's a lot of confusion out there in the market about exactly what SASE is and what Zero Trust is. And, even different security vendors and industry analysts are coming up with different definitions of what these things are. For example, is it a replacement for SD-WAN, and where does SDN fit into the picture? So I'm maybe to sort of kick things off, I'm really keen to hear from you. Just give us a bit of an overview of that, a bit of history of SASE, because the terminology has not been around all that long. Just what does it mean?
SASE is a terminology that our friends at Gartner decided they need a new acronym to add to the mix. So around about 2019, it was their way of bundling together a group of technologies that deal with that access security at the edge. So they brought together components that have been around for 5 to 10 years and put it all under one umbrella so that they could score and give guidance back to the industry how you would actually look at implementing SASE across the board, because in the past it's been each one of the components of SASE is a standalone product. So you would have lots of vendors who would provide you the different services, and trying to link them together got more complex, got harder. So they looked at how they could bring those together and mark people that could actually move across the spectrum. So SASE itself, from a IT perspective, really kicked in around that sort of pandemic time frame. And as the cloud came on board, sort of started the driver where our end users are not sitting accessing data in the corporate network anymore. A lot of the applications and the data is up in the cloud, and they may still have some applications they access inside the corporate network. So connecting via your VPN to your corporate office to then trombone out to go to the internet added latency and didn't give the right performance to those roaming or remote users. So that's where the combination of tools came together to create the SASE model. So SASE is made up of basically 4 modules. At the end of the day, there's the secure web gateway, which looks after that access and basically a firewall in the cloud. You've got your cloud access security broker, so your CASB type environment, which has been around, as I say, for about 10 years, where you access and control what people are getting to on the cloud platforms. And then you've got your ZTNA, which is your Zero Trust Network Access. And then the fourth and final component, which makes up SASE, is the SD-WAN. So you have 3 security services and 1 network service, and that becomes your SASE model. Obviously, since then, as about 2021, Gartner went, well, people aren't doing all of SASE, so maybe they want to just do the cloud. And from there, they've now produced another acronym they've come out with, which is SASE, which is the combination of those first 3 products, the secure web gateway, the CASB, and the ZTNA. So that's where we're sort of sitting at today's world and what we're seeing in the market.
So really, in essence, what you're saying is that the key driver for it to some degree has been this significant shift from that sort of traditional sort of castle and moat approach around the data center, and that being the sort of primary point of contact. But now we've seen a lot more people working remotely, massive shift towards cloud computing, and that has changed the balance and, in some degree, the volumes that are sort of hitting these things. And so being able to distribute that load and control that on a more broader term is really one of the big goals of SASE.
Exactly. You're bringing in that security layer and you're taking it out of the data center and out of the firewall as such where it lived before, and you're moving it to the cloud because you're protecting cloud services along with you could still protect services on-prem as well. So it enables you to address a user that could be in the office, at home, or that road warrior at a cafe.
There's a bit of a misconception that SASE is a kind of replacement for SD-WAN, but really SD-WAN is a core component of, makes up that suite of capabilities, if you like, within the framework of SASE itself.
It is key to that SASE model because obviously SD-WAN is around how we enable us to offload traffic at the edge or at the site versus bringing it back to your central office and going through that central firewall again. It's saying, hey, at the branch office, let's send that cloud-based traffic straight to the internet and not send it back to the corporate. So where I need to go back to the corporate, then sure, go back over the corporate network. So now you're not tied into having those big high-speed networks with big internet pipes. You can go out and get that lower-end broadband connection, which obviously New Zealand's got fairly good coverage of and can take good advantage of to go, hey, I'll break that traffic out at the edge. But if you're going to break it out at the edge, then that's when you want to be using your CASB secure gateway to protect what those people are accessing, just like if they were at home on their corporate network, not using the VPN back into corporate, how do you fit it in? So it is very much key to it, but this new SASE that came out a couple of years ago terminology is where vendors don't have that SD-WAN component. So you'll see a lot of security vendors come out and say, hey, we've got SASE, but they have no SD-WAN component. So when you drill into it, they like to call themselves an SSE.
So that was another question I had for you, and I think particularly when it talk about maybe some of the slightly older SD-WAN solutions, and maybe we could talk a little bit about Aruba in that context in terms of what they offer now. But are solutions compatible with this framework, or are there challenges there for businesses that maybe have invested in some of this technology already?
Each vendor implements it slightly different. Yes, there are some standards they stick to, but at the end of the day, if I'm a firewall vendor, I'm going to build it around my firewall capabilities versus if I'm a pure network telco type vendor, then I'm going to build it around my SD-WAN capabilities. So you mentioned Aruba. If you're looking at Aruba, they started building SD-WAN without that extra firewall, but they'd already realized they needed a SSE provider, and that's why they worked closely with Zscaler to be able to offer that so that you could put that layer of security around your SD-WAN. And then in the meantime, they've gone out and acquired an SSE company, and now that's part of their portfolio. So you can still connect to the known brands out there, but they've got their own offering now, which is obviously all built in the cloud and transitions for people as it goes through.
But let's talk about Zero Trust. My understanding of Zero Trust, it is really a journey, isn't it? It's something that takes time, and there's a series of steps that you have to go through, and some may be right for your business and some may not be right for your business. What does Zero Trust mean to you, I guess?
My view on Zero Trust is simply it's a strategy or an architecture. Again, it's one of those things that's born out of a university environment where in 2015 they came up with this concept of Zero Trust, which was really just a combination of things we already knew were best practice. But obviously in that time frame, it was hard to implement. And this is where the likes of SASE and where what gets rated as a great SASE product is that integration is being brought in so that all those four segments work together. Well, Zero Trust is just bringing together those concepts and technologies from an architecture perspective. So micro-segmentation of your network, of your workforces, your identity verification, so turning around and everyone has an identity that you have to verify and check through. Obviously, you start building in governance around your networks, around your applications, and then you have a policy manager that sort of orchestrates over the top. At the end of the day, all it's doing is providing you that structure around your security posture, and it's a strategy. So as a strategy, an organization could actually implement Zero Trust without SASE, but SASE can't be implemented without Zero Trust.
So when we talk about Zero Trust as a strategy, for those businesses who are perhaps a little bit more at the beginning of this journey, where should they start?
Look, if you're going through that digital transformation to say, hey, how do I get to be in an environment where we trust nothing, which is basically the concept of Zero Trust, unless you're starting at the network layer and you're thinking about redesigning your network, the easiest place we find with our customers is to start at that identity. And if you can get an identity that is across all your systems, that is that single sign-on type environment, you start moving down the track to, hey, I trust the user, and then you move to, do I trust the devices, and then the servers and applications. The network is a layer that you can spend a lot of time and effort doing, but you won't see a lot of return on investment, because when you start looking at it, you say, well, my users are out in the field, they're roaming, so doing micro-segmentation on my network doesn't actually benefit me. But if I'm a factory or a retail shop, then it's going to benefit me. So it's where you are in your journey and what your business goals are as you step through that, how you implement it. But there's no right or wrong way. You start where it makes sense for you.
So David, that's probably a good lead in to talk about privileged access management and I guess some of the drive towards really putting in place those controls. What are some of the steps you think that IT managers should be thinking about when they're looking at privileged access management?
So privileged access management is really about assigning permissions when and where they're needed. From a IT manager's perspective or CIO's perspective, you're looking to probably lock up the crown jewels, being those administrative accounts that have high privileges. In that way, you're making those users stop and think. But if you've been in the industry a while, you will remember the days where we used to have two accounts. You would have your admin account and you'd have your user account. All it's doing is replacing that methodology with one account, but somewhere in there you've got to elevate your privileges to go through to the next level. So to start looking at implementing it is looking at those high-level permissions that you want to control and track who goes into what. And at the same time, by implementing it, you are starting to build a security framework that if that person has been compromised, they may not have the credentials or the power to do more damage in your environment because they haven't elevated. And you've got to, normally from an elevation, you've got to have a second form of approval to get through. So we're seeing people like Microsoft push that further and further. Obviously, they've just changed it for us as a managed service provider with CSP, that we now use global access permissions that we get granted via the customer. So none of our engineers get to log in as a global admin as such. They have to log in with their accounts and then elevate. So there's plenty of organizations or software developers coming out with that sort of concept, but it is driven by your identity management system. So whatever you have there will drive the privilege identity management service itself.
What's been your experience of the reaction to that? Do you see a lot of sort of pushback, or how's it been adopted so far, do you think?
I see the adoption's easy with a customer interface, with the end users understanding that, hey, I don't need that privilege, I'll elevate when I need to. It's the software developer, and in our case, it's the technicians who believe they know everything and they should have that permission all the time. And obviously it does put an extra layer of time and effort into something, because you go to do something, you've got to elevate to be able to do it, then do the task. So if you get interrupted, it may time out. But we had that 5-10 years ago when you had a different login and you had to log out as your user account and log in as your admin account to be able to do stuff. It's just a habit forming thing that, yes, developers love to be God on their systems, but that's not secure anymore. So it's how we build a secure environment. But I'm finding with more and more of the sort of younger development group, they get it because they've been taught to develop with security in mind, whereas it's more of the old hats of the room that think they need global access or full permissions.
So let's talk a little bit about the vendor landscape. If you sort of circle back to SASE, is this something that's quite sort of vendor-centric, and you need to always be looking at one vendor solution, or what does that landscape look like from when you start to talk about implementing a strategy around zero trust and SASE?
So when you're looking at that SASE model, you may not be ready to do, say, the SD-WAN component, but you are looking to get that CASB, this secure web gateway in place so that you can control people coming in and giving them the right experience, no matter which location they're coming from. So when you're choosing a vendor, it's looking at who actually will give me my full stack at the end of the day. I may not be ready for SD-WAN today, but let's choose the vendor. And it's very easy to go to market and go find a vendor today who says they're SASE, but at the end of the day, they're not, because they don't have, say, the SD-WAN component. And it's very easy to go find a network vendor who goes, we've got SASE, but they don't have the other secure gateways or the CASBs. They're tapping into someone else, like Aruba did originally. When they didn't have that, they built a mechanism to use Zscaler as their service. Now they've got something in their access product that now allows them to offer that as one complete solution. But we're seeing it more with vendors that they're coming out with that, or they're creating the partnership. But if you go and buy the point solutions in those spaces, you will struggle to get them to all communicate. And that's where the zero trust architecture kicks in, because you're trying to create that one identity for not only the user, but the device and then the services they're accessing. Because if you've got those, then you can create those policies. So it sits over zero trust. It says, okay, Barry's logging in from home. We trust that device. It's a corporate device. It's passed its compliance tests. He's accessing this data. We're happy for him to access it. But tomorrow, Barry's logging in from China or Russia or somewhere else that's deemed not acceptable to the business, and he's not coming from a corporate device. So maybe we won't let Barry into the network. Or if we do, we won't let Barry touch that service because that's the HR or the finance system, but we'll let him touch his email. or something like that, as an example.
It sounds like you're planning my next holiday. Thanks for that. That's we appreciate it.
So I thought they were places you might want to go.
What are some of the challenges? I'm putting myself in the shoes of an IT manager. What are some of the challenges from a legacy point of view? And I've got existing investments and network and firewalls and these sorts of things. Where does network as a service fit into that as an opportunity to help address some of those challenges?
Yeah, look, the challenges come in that which part do you tackle first? And I suppose that is looking at your environment and saying, where's my greatest risk versus where's my greatest reward? Because obviously, as an IT manager, you're driving how do I deliver the technology out to the business so they can do what they need to do, be it make widgets, sell widgets, whatever they're there to do. So you can't get tied up chasing a holy grail of a architecture, but it's how you bolt those in and get driven by those mechanisms. So sometimes it's, hey, if I've got people roaming or using more in the cloud, so we've just gone to maybe Microsoft 365, and I've now started to use Azure Active Directory or Azure Entra ID these days, and it's new naming. It's how do I use that product to then start doing my zero trust? And I might then turn around and say, well, okay, now that I've got that, I've got some sites that need upgrading and I've got some budget for those networks. It's building out that stack, as I said earlier, around that SASE model, finding something that will actually plug into all of it. And when you talk about network as a service, obviously we have an offering in that space where we've partnered with HPE Aruba to actually deliver that, be it wireless, wired, or that WAN connectivity. And now obviously we now have the new Access SSE product that plugs into that. So we can give you the SD-WAN, give you all your circuits, and it comes down to a utility service. So depending on how your business structure is, you might find an OpEx model fits you, and that's where network as a service fits in nicely with customers. If they're not a capital asset-rich environment, they want to drive on OpEx so that they can scale up and scale down as they need to, whereas sometimes with those capital-rich organizations, they're happy to spend the capital up front. But it's still the same technology, still the same concepts, it's just a different way of delivering it. So that's the reason for NAS and how it would fit into that approach of saying, okay, I want a zero-touch architecture, and in doing that, I'm going to use a SASE model to achieve it, or a vendor that sort of fits across that SASE. But there are so many, and that's the bit, I suppose, to reiterate, there are a lot of vendors that will say they're SASE, and they'll miss one of those four components. And that's where you've got to drill in and understand what they are.
What are kind of, for anybody listening to this podcast and is this kind of a next step? What is the next step for them in terms of an engagement, or they want to know more information? Obviously,
we're here to help. Soft Source FeeBridge is happy to walk people through the discussion points, but it's understanding what you want to achieve out of it. So are you being driven by that model where you've got some infrastructure upgrades coming and someone's pushing the SD-WAN topic with you, whichever vendor you're dealing with at the time? It's looking at that and saying, what's my bigger picture? Do you have a play in the SASE market? If so, what is it? So I may not be ready for it, but I can make sure I've got the foundations, because we know when we put in a WAN type environment, that's not something you're going to change in the next few years. It's in there for a minimum 3-year sort of cycle to expense the cost. It's more around how do I plug in my other components. But we're seeing more and more customers who go, I'll go down the SSE track first, so I'll go sign up to a product that gives me the secure web gateway, the CASB, the ZTNA capabilities, and I'll do that first because that is software driven. Doesn't require any physical assets, and sometimes that actually solves some of your other problems, because you may have problems with your VPN today. It's not fast enough when everyone connects in, or if you're looking at firewall upgrades, you're thinking, oh, how big do I need to make this because I've got all these VPN services. But all the people are doing is tromboning through the firewall to go back out to the internet. Or you're letting them go to the internet direct and just coming back via the VPN for those business apps. So if you look at the SSE world, you can actually address that and still give them access back into the corporate world to those applications they need to. But now you've taken the control and the reliance on that VPN service away, and you're using the speed and performance of the location that the person's at, because you're using your securities in the cloud, which matches up to where most people are taking their business applications. So I don't come across many customers these days that aren't using either Google or Microsoft for their productivity suites. At the same point, there's more and more of the CRMs and ERP type solutions that are in the cloud that people are using as their back office applications. So if you've got those there, how do you secure them? So that's where we sort of sit down and we see more clients wanting to look in that SSE space. So that's what I would personally focus on first, unless I had a driving need to upgrade my WAN. And at that point, then I'd let the SD-WAN drive my decisions to what I get. But I would be keeping in mind I want all four. I'm being greedy as an IT manager. I want all four. I want the ultimate, because I don't want 4 separate admins to administrate those key areas. I want probably one admin. I'm lucky to get half an admin to do that in today's environment.
As you say, we're here to help, and happy to talk to people if they've got more questions. And I know we've got some more public events coming up as well, which would be great to have you along to talk at those as well. Look, thanks for your time, David. Appreciate it as always.
You're welcome, Barry. You know me, I'm always happy to talk about technology.
Have a great day.
Thanks.